Hello to you, beautiful people of Africa and the world at large. Welcome to yet another edition of your discursive program. It is Global Insight on the Pan-African Television for you, Media Africa, and of course Africa on the table for discussion this day, and of course Africa to the world, looking at the cooperation between the Russian Federation and the African continent now in the area of industries and energy development, and we're looking at how Africa can harness its potential while capitalizing or leveraging on the cooperation ties with the Russian Federation. So this discussion will explore the critical aspects of collaboration between the Russian Federation and African nations, stressing the necessity of establishing industrial facilities and energy processing enterprises. It will look into the inside. Of course, some participants gathered in Moscow on the 16th of October 2024, and they provided a lot of insight pertaining the field of industries and energy as far as the relationship between Russia and Africa is concerned. And one of those participants was Andrei Gromov, who actually provided some insight regarding the creation of the African Russian Energy Association area and its potential impact on boosting Africa's economic trajectory of growth. For that, we would also dive into how mutually beneficial interactions supported by Russia's technological expertise can help Africa achieve greater economic sovereignty and development. Now it was disclosed during the first international business to business, that's B2B forum, Russia Africa Expo 2024, made in Africa. Like already underlined, the forum held on the 16th of October 2024 that brought together representatives of government, business and businesses and states corporations from Russia and African countries to brainstorm the development and strengthening of Russian Africa cooperation, including in the field of trade, among other aspects. So we're going to, look at the importance of this sector as far as the cooperation between Russia and Africa is concerned. To note that the creation of area came after the first Russia-Africa summit, and of course driving development. How can we do that if we do not leverage the industry, the scope, and of course energy that can propel the continent Africa towards practical industrialization? So with a panel of experts, we're going to get a greater understanding into our topic for discussion, the relevance of the sectors of industries and energy in boosting or harnessing Africa's potential, particularly strengthening its economic trajectory. Without much ado, let's take you now to Russia, and we acknowledge the presence of RISHABH SETHI, international relations expert, who also doubles as civil diplomat, Indian, but joining us from Moscow. Hello to you, SETHI, and thanks for joining today's edition of Global Insight.
Good evening, everybody, and good evening to Miss Clarisse and for you media. And first of all, thank you so much for your invitation. I am honored once again to be joined again on your TV channel to share my views regarding this great important agenda regarding in terms of the Russian-African ties, and especially in the sphere of energy sector and industrialization. And secondly, also about the upcoming next year G20 summit. Absolutely. As Africa will be holding the G20 next year. So first of all, I would like to congratulate to all the our friends and colleagues from Africa for getting the chairmanship for G20 from this year, 1st of December. So I'm looking forward for our today's evening show to share my and express my views on this important topic and agenda. Thank you so much.
And thank you for giving it priority, Richard. It is time to see how Africa can leverage the scope of international cooperation in the times of multilateralism to fast-track development in every sphere across the African continent, not to repeat the mistakes of the past, of course, which characterized the colonial era. And we stay in Russia and acknowledging for the first time on For You Media Africa, Mikhail Postnikov, head of the French Department of African Initiative News Agency. You're welcome to Global Insight, Mikhail.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It is indeed important to talk today about Russian and African ties. I've seen some pictures of the Made in Africa Forum, which was held on the 16th October, and I've been there as a journalist to cover this event, and this is a manifestation of rising ties between Russia and African countries. Of course, it is important, just as my colleague said, to think about the G20 presidency of South Africa in 2025. I think it is a big opportunity. And for me and for our agency, it is a big honor and pleasure to be here and to share our opinion with you.
Thank you so much for giving importance to this very important discursive program, Global Insight, at the time of high stakes at the global level. And we also welcome Yulia, BERG, political scientist and founder GLOBEUS Expert Club. Welcome to today's edition of the program, Yulia.
Hello, very happy to join today and to discuss the important issue of the growing pace of cooperation. So we see more and more of practicalities to it right now, which is definitely not just a good sign, but it's a great development of the perspectives that are out there.
Absolutely. And of course, talking about the perspective that are out there, I would love to have from you, Yulia. You were part of the B2B forum that held on the 16th of October 2024 in Moscow, that Zoom on Made in Africa, of course, capitalizing on how Africa can harness its energy industry potentials to fast-track development. So what can we denote holistically from such a forum in line with cooperation between the Russian Federation and African countries?
Well, regarding this forum, I should say that an important fact about it is that it was, let's say, the idea itself came from Louis Gaudet, who is the head of Cameroonian diaspora in Russia, and he also runs the Russian African Business Club. And aside for many formal events that were being held, including the 2 Russia-Africa summits, including the parliamentary conference and many other official ones organized by various kinds of institutions, this very event already shows that the interest and the practicalities of cooperation has come down to from the state level, let's say, and from the level of big corporations, it has come to the level of the medium and small-sized businesses. And it's being supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, by various kinds of governmental bodies. So we see that at the moment we can be already talking about major changes in the approach itself, and major changes in the quality of the ties between the continent and the Russian Federation. So if back in 2019, let's say the first Russia-Africa summit was more about just getting to know each other, and at that point it was not yet clear how and where cooperation could be set up. Now it's coming to the fact that many businessmen from the Russian Federation, including the small and medium businesses, are interested to go in. Yet, we do understand that there are issues that are fundamental and very much strategic. And of course, no cooperation, especially in terms of production, in terms of development of industries, or even agriculture, could be possible if the energy is not there. So setting up the electrical capacities, making sure that generation capacity is there, that the grid is functioning fine, can basically guarantee the fact that other kinds of businesses can come in, starting from production all the way to the services. And that is also the very foundation for communication technologies that can contribute to skills development, to online learning, and to various opportunities opening up for the citizens. So electricity, business, and related spheres ensure improvements of overall quality of life and overall well-being. But this is the starting point for sure. No electricity, no production. No electricity, no light. So that is definitely key, and I think we will go into details of the possibilities of cooperation later on.
Indeed, possibilities of cooperation to ensure that we have a win-win relationship as far as this is concerned. Now, in the same light, I will come to you, Mikhail. Still looking at the relevance in the preamble, we mentioned about the creation of the Africa-Russia Energy Association. Let's look at the relevance of this association in meeting Africa's energy demands in contemporary society.
Yes, of course, the creation of this association, Russian African Energetic Association, is really important, since Russia has a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience in the field of energetic development. Just 100 years ago, Russia had almost no electricity and had to overcome this shortage in just 10 years. And since that, Russia remains one of the leaders in production of energy. It's can be seen in different spheres of production of energy, such as nuclear energy, solar energy, thermal energy. We have different sources of energy in Russia, and we have a lot of competences in these spheres. And I believe Russian government and Russian business is ready and glad to share its experience, its possibilities with African countries. We can note already several projects such as nuclear stations in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and in Egypt, which are under construction or in discussion, which are really big projects, both for Russian business and for national economies of African countries. We also speak about gas stations which produce energy, and we are talking about solar parks, solar stations, which are necessary for African countries which are looking forward to construct nuclear stations, since you need a lot of industrial and energetic capacities to build such stations. We are also talking about rubbish, about transforming waste into energy. I see a lot of Russian companies which are interested in constructing such facilities for transforming waste into energy in Africa, in Central, West, East, North and South Africa. So I see really a lot of opportunities which will give not only stable energetic systems for African countries, but a good base for industrial development, since we cannot talk about developing industry, developing economy without stable, fundamental energetic system.
And this, which is very imperative, it is the energy that drives, of course, the economy. And looking at it from the African perspective with you, Rishabh, we are looking at those specific, the scope available. Let's take the phase from the first Russia-Africa summit to the second and other, economic related summit and other, conferences which have been organized to, strengthen the already existing ties between the African continent and the Russian Federation, particularly. How can maybe the both partners navigate some of the challenges, which I would love that you highlight, associated with establishing a more robust cooperation framework in the area of industry to fast track, of course, industrialization and facelift the economy of African countries, not just a few countries, but looking at the continent holistically.
Well, sorry,
Richard.
Yeah, please, sure. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. Clarisse, for your question. First of all, I want to say that when we are talking about the Russia-Africa Summit initiative, first of all, everybody knows that this was a great initiative by the President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, who initiated this great initiative to make strong cooperation by doing this initiative of this summit. Because when we are talking about Russia-Africa Summit, this initiative is like another multilateral group, like we have G20, BRICS and other platforms. So Russia-Africa is particularly that all the relations, cooperations Russia is trying to develop in the future more stronger with the African countries. And under this platform, multilateral and also the bilateral events are happening between Russia and the other African countries. When we talk about Africa, as Africa, one of the biggest continent having a lot of opportunities, a lot of prospective things from the different African countries, Africa is trying to develop strong cooperation in this different sphere. As we were talking about one of the very important sector is the energy sector. Yes, it's correct, because Russia and Africa, many African countries are developing strong cooperation in this energy sphere. When we talk about energy sphere, so as we see that global climate problem, global climate change is one of the biggest agendas almost in every country in the world. And Africa plays one of the very important role, because there are so many countries in the African continent, and Africa and Russia in the future should try to make collaboration and cooperation in the sphere of hydrogen energy. Now also, as when we are talking about climate change, there are a lot of prospects and a lot of work to be done in this sphere, seriously, to save our planet and to save our countries. Because when we talk about climate change, as I told you about hydrogen energy is one sphere, and then other type of renewable sources of energy. As Russia being one of the very strong for African countries, have a lot of new technologies in this sphere. Russia is developing strong new technologies in the sphere of hydrogen energy already, especially in the Far East region of Russia, and also in the other renewable energies also. Because we need to stop our dependency on the fossil fuels, because as the population is growing year by year. So this is one sector. And second, I would say also in the sphere of youth cooperation, as Africa having one of the very strong youth population. So youth is the future for the development of the country. The youth of the country, or African countries, should be supported equally, and they should get much more and more support and motivation. Especially when we talk about the youth, we can talk about the startups initiative, because the youth, if they are doing the startups within their own country, so they are making new innovative ideas. They are trying to develop new innovative ideas in the sphere of business development for their own country, and this would help them to make collaboration with Russia much more actively. As being I'm living already in Russia here from last many years, I can see here that here a lot of much more opportunities are available for the young people, for the youth, especially in the sphere of education, in the sphere of startup programs also. A lot of new programs are available. So the cooperation between Russia and Africa can also help in the sphere of youth cooperation. And then we talk about the trade and business agreement in different sphere. For example, food security also. And then in the terms of IT technology, artificial intelligence, robotics. Okay, so these are so many other spheres where African countries can make active collaboration with Russia, because Russia being having the new technologies in different areas in the sphere of also infrastructure development also. So Russia can of course help and support the African countries in terms of investment and the development of the country's infrastructure that would directly or indirectly help in the development of the country's economic and growth also in the future.
Indeed, for future cooperation, for future use, if I could capitalize on what you have highlighted and what the other experts have already underlined, particularly on this aspect, I'll come back to you, Yulia, to focus on what you mentioned earlier on while you were talking that you know, the Russian State Duma has outlined some of these import or relevance towards ensuring that there is a more practical, you know, practical move towards ensuring, you know, the industrialization drive in African countries. So what are those practical moves or points valid that the Russian Duma has already advocated, and at what phase are this project in terms of you know, enhancing the energy level of the African continent, given that Russia is like a motor or an engine, and in terms of you know, technology and other aspects that can fast track this industrialization and, you know, speed up the development project to give impetus and meaning to its ties with Africa.
Well, a lot is being done, even though there are many problems that were faced once the cooperation was attempted to be relaunched, let's say. So on the one hand, there is the experience that big corporations just like Rosatom have already had, and there's their project that is a great success of construction of a nuclear plant in Egypt, right?
Yes.
At the same time, there were differences noticed in terms of business culture, in terms of communication issues, even simple issues like language still set certain barriers, because translation back and forth requires a lot of time and effort, so things go slower. Then there is a great difference in terms of legislative regulations for various kinds of businesses. In some cases, there are no agreements yet in place that would help overcome the issues of double taxation and many other things. So there is a lot to be done, and specifically for that, back in July this year, the African-Russian Energy Association held an event at the State Duma that was led by its secretary, the secretary of the board, Andrei Gromov, and the aim was to see what kind of laws are supposed to be introduced in order to break the barriers, specifically the bureaucratic barriers that exist. And representatives of the companies that already have experience of working in Africa, or the ones just analyzing the new potential market, are willing to speed up the processes. So they were present at the event, and they shared their experience, bad experience, and suggestions for good experience. Yesterday as well, the African-Russian Association was present at the event, and there was a great interest from the African partners coming in, and the representatives of the diplomatic part of it, that were also saying that energy projects, even small-scale ones, for instance, solar panels, are in great demand. Right, and those are in demand for remote areas. Those are in demand for mining sites where basic, let's say, processing could already take place. So all of those are quite possible, yet here we might face other issues like transactions and payments and everything else. But for solving this problem, the African-Russian Energy Association offers a set of methods that would allow for barter trade, which in many cases can simplify the procedures. What else is important to add here is that now there is the BRICS framework, and we're looking forward to the BRICS summit. That would probably imply expanding the membership for other countries who have applied. There are already 3 countries from the continent, which is South Africa, Egypt, and Ethiopia, within the BRICS framework. And that umbrella could also guarantee that China and India, as huge players at the global arena, could join with their technologies, IT equipment, many other things. India has a great experience of industrialization. So this is something that could also be looked at. Brazil at the moment is not super active, but Brazil is also a country that has gone a long way. And for instance, their sugar production is at a good level, and it happened just in a few years, let's say. Brazil even exports sugar to Africa, being one of the biggest suppliers for the continent. So this kind of agricultural and related technologies could also be looked at. This is just an example of how BRICS can actually lay foundations for a different cooperation framework that would definitely provide substantial changes to the economies and quality of life on the African continent.
Indeed, imperative to ensure that this cooperation brings resolve to the many problems that will, eventually, just like you've highlighted, Yulia, propel the African people, especially those in the rural areas, to have a standard of living that suits the endowment of the continent. And that is why we want to focus with you, Mikhail. Here, when we're looking at Africa as a country or a continent, I beg your pardon, that is highly endowed with, energy resources. And according to some reports in 2023, Africa was the African continent represented the fastest growing energy markets across the world. But in spite of this growing, the growth recorded, another report suggested that more than half of the estimated population of 1.5 billion still have no access to electricity for domestic utilization while industries continue suffering from frequent power outages. And this is just a major setback. We are talking about a report that was released in 2023. We see that, even assessing energy at the lower level is still very problematic. And here we are looking at the phase where we have an already industrialized nation like Russia trading with African countries. So how can, what practical ways can be put on the table by the major stakeholders at the fore to ensure that they tackle this, the problem and try to reduce the number of people who still do not have access to electricity, talk less of, bringing industries across the continent without the energy to push them into functioning properly for the set purposes?
That is a great point indeed to talk about, since we talk a lot about industrial consumers of energy, but we talk less about domestic consumption of energy, and that can be a good investment for Russian companies to increase domestic consumption of energy, which might even be more lucrative and more beneficial to develop this domestic consumption. Here, if we are talking about domestic consumption, it is not only new power plants which are needed. We are also talking about power lines. We need to give access to most remote towns and villages of African countries, because if we are talking about capital cities of many of all African countries, the situation more or less resolved. At least people have power lines, people have some sources of energy, and in this case we need to go into remote regions of African continent, of African countries, and that is a question of power line infrastructure. Because even if you have a power plant, like, for example, in Egypt, a nuclear power plant, you still need to give this energy to domestic consumers, to households. And this is indeed a question which is a little bit disregarded, and I hope such events as yesterday's forum will bring into light this question, and Russian companies will be able to see this issue, to understand this issue, and work with African governments and African companies to resolve this problem.
Indeed, having energy even at the lower level, particularly in Africa, where the informal sector plays a huge role in contributing to the economic trajectory of the continent. So, how can their plight actually be defined or represented in at a very important fora like what we saw yesterday in Russia, bringing together stakeholders from the continent. and from the Russian Federation. And let's look at a platform which is already existing with you, Rishabh. We mentioned the Africa-Russia Energy Association, which is already existing. Can we really capitalize on this association to ensure that we meet the objective of this energy maybe cooperation? And in what ways can the successes of these organizations serve as a model for future maybe global partnership focus on ensuring sustainability in the area of energy and industries, especially in Africa?
Oh, well.
So when we are talking about, especially about Africa-Russia Energy Association, such associations work as a platform. These models are very much important because everything cannot be possible to be done by the initiative of the government only. So such non-governmental and commercial organizations are very much important. Absolutely. Which act as a building of platform that would help in the development of stronger cooperation and partnership. In the open doors, in the open platform, where the people from different background, from governmental, non-governmental, commercial, business companies, or maybe researchers from different educational organizations get equal opportunities and chance to share their innovative ideas, also even their innovative project in such spheres. Because as Africa-Russia Energy Association is one example that is working in the sphere of energy, and that is helping to provide all the new innovation technologies that is, for example, growing or happening in Russia to the African countries, and vice versa. Something new and innovative in Africa could be, if it could be useful for Russia, it can be bring to Russia also for the Russian market, for example. So such initiatives are important in all the different spheres. Energy is one sector, and then second sector, for example, is about cultural ties. Then third example is about agriculture, IT industries. So such corporations, agencies are very much required that would help to build stronger partnership and a stronger collaboration and cooperation, because Africa need real friends like India or Russia or China like that, because the future of Africa is a golden future, because Africa, being an independent continent, have a lot of capabilities and a lot of opportunities, because as Africa has their own natural resources which are being grown inside Africa. And from last, if you see the history record, many of the African countries are still being controlled by the Western countries. And now this is the golden period of time that Africa needs to be freed from those Western countries, and the real friends like Russia, India, as I told before, need to make strong collaboration and cooperation in different areas with such organization that can help for the development of the infrastructure and the quality of life for the citizens of Africa.
Okay. Thank you. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that you are onto your Pan-African television. It is For You Media Africa, and the platform Global Insight. Today on the table is the African agenda, particularly with the relationship between the Russian Federation and African countries. We're looking at how these two parties can leverage on the existing scope to develop the energy and energy sector that can drive real industrialization for Africa to meet up, of course, with the changing global times, and as it works to fast track its economic trajectory. And of course, how will industrialization drive in Africa helps to bring to the fore its gigantic project, the African Continental Free Trade Area, diversifying the economy. Now, Yulia, let's look at this very important topic when we're questioned. While talking earlier on, Rishabh underlined that the African continent or African countries is still like somehow controlled by the former colonial masters or even even by some Western countries. So now let's look at in terms of policy implementation. How can the Russian Federation and African continent ensure that they have feasible policies that will, have a smooth path for them to push ahead or go ahead with the practicalization of their energy projects without being held in the web of other policies tying African countries to former nations or countries who are not practically allies to the Russian Federation. This is the quest for interest, so a national interest of countries, that sometimes Africa is caught up or entrapped in the web of such contestation among global powers wanting to define their sphere across the continent.
Well, you see, in order to analyze this issue, it's important to look at the very core of why development of industry has been suppressed in Africa by the Western countries. So for them, one of the most important things is to be extracting resources. And if you look at the stats, you will see how dependent, for example, the European Union and countries like France and Belgium and many other ones, and the United States, how dependent they are on the resources that they extract in Africa. So one of the biggest problem has been the fact that there was no fair competition at the market and no possibility for the African countries to be selling their resources at a fair price. Right, and then there was no chance for development, because development and, let's say, being able to produce their own goods and sell them at the market instead of just giving up the resources, that was not in the interests of the West, and that was something that was suppressed in many cases violently, right? So we have seen what happened to Ivory Coast after in around 2010, there was an attempt for building up a more sovereign state. We saw what happened to let's say Burkina Faso when Thomas Sankara was trying to follow up and to implement a more sovereign policy. We saw how Muammar Gaddafi was taken out from Libya when he was talking about Pan-Africanism and such things. So consolidation, sovereignty are definitely key things that are needed in order to be able to make own decisions and choose partners from the open and free market. But we see now that the situation has changed a lot, because also there is China, there is India, there is Russia, and all of those countries have their own industrial potential. All of those countries have various kinds of technologies and things they can also offer in the market. And even though there is still quite a lot of pressure put on them as well, and there is a system that is implying quite a lot of interdependency, at the same time, we see that the core instruments that the Western powers or the global elites rather were using is creating corruption, making sure that political elites are corrupt, making sure that they're raised in a way in which they're very much controlled, that their key assets like financial assets, real estate, their children are softly kept hostage in those countries. So by this, I imply that there are maybe no direct threats, but there is an understanding that those are being controlled by somebody else. And it's also a very strong, it's always a very strong mechanism in order to impose control without even crossing the violent lines, which they don't mind crossing as well. So the key to opening up new perspectives are definitely within the fight for real sovereignty, Pan-Africanism that would imply consolidation, and being able to use the open global market, specifically the countries that provide an ideologically different basis for cooperation. And if we're going back to the energy projects, what else is important to understand there is that those imply a long cycle of implementation. So design, construction works, and everything else, it already takes years. But what else is important is to have specialists that know how to use specific kinds of equipment and all this. So that implies big educational programs, and that implies a lot of joint work for the scientists so that they can evaluate the situation in the best way and find optimal technological solutions. Just to give you an example, when Aswan a hydro plant was built in Egypt, 1 million specialists of various kinds of professions were getting education, and they got education in order to carry out the activities and their professional activities specifically as it was supposed to be done in order to make this great hydro plant function. So just one infrastructural project implied 1 million of people being involved and getting education in various kinds of professions. Mm-hmm. So that also means that this can guarantee progress in many other areas, because once you already have this many specialists, they can, upgrade on other systems. They can take that knowledge to other countries, and they can implement that knowledge in order to build more and more projects. But still, you cannot avoid starting from the very basis, including the fundamental science, including education exchanges, and that as well has a great social effect, making sure that youth receives treatment.
Okay. And in the same perspective, still in line with the policies that will help to fast track this, cooperation, let's understand from the African perspective with you, Mikhail, while Yulia talking, mention the Aswan High Dam, and we know that it is actually located on the Nile River. And as we talk to the Egypt and Ethiopia, very buoyant economies across the African continent, who are part of the BRICS bloc, are somehow in a diplomatic role or field because of the interest or personal interest in the Nile Dam, which seems to be, somehow hanging on the balance. So how can we settle some bureaucratic or maybe diplomatic discrepancies which exist already between African countries to ensure that they can maybe leverage the scope that the Russian Federation has to offer in terms of cooperation in energy level?
As we see, there are some already existing platforms for this cooperation in Africa and in Russia, but as we see today, more African countries are joining multipolar platforms such as BRICS. This year we have seen Ethiopia and Egypt join this platform, and maybe this can be a way, a means of establishing new and fair bureaucratic and diplomatic means of cooperation between countries on African continent and between African countries and Russian Federation. We also see these forums. So far we have had two Russia-Africa forums. I do hope that the next forum, which is expected to be held in 2026, will be held on African soil, in an African country, and it will boost our cooperation even more, because, well, coming to Russia is great for African countries, but Russians need to come visit African countries as well, to understand better the culture, the economy of African countries. And this, I believe, will help Russia understand better the needs, some specific details of work on African continent, and will help it facilitate cooperation with African countries and for African countries, because, of course, we are talking not only about Russian-African cooperation, but also about cooperation between African countries with the help of Russia.
Okay. Thank you so much. We are going to round off with the first topic on Russia-Africa cooperation, especially how to leverage the platform for industrialization with you. Rishabh, looking at after policies, we look at the technicalities of the whole situation. So, what do you think on that area are some of those technical expertise that particularly may be driven not just by the Russian government but other private sectors to ensure that there is exchange of technical expertise that will help fast track some of this project at a small, maybe a lower level before entering into intergovernmental cooperation like what we're seeing Rosatom in Burkina Faso and elsewhere across Africa.
Miss Clarisse, that it's important, as I told before, that we need such non-commercial or private organizations or companies also that could help for the growth of stronger cooperation between the countries. And I can give you one example. There is an organization working specially in the sphere of hydrogen energy, named as National Union for the Development of Hydrogen Energy. So this is an organization which is working in Russia and already ready to work with other countries also, especially in the sphere of hydrogen energy, where they have a team of expertise people, engineers, researchers who can help in the implementation of projects in the sphere of hydrogen energy, because the climate is the biggest agenda right now globally. It doesn't matter which country is all about, but that is why now this organization is trying to develop or establish the hydrogen energy based power plants also, or hydrogen fuel cells also for automobiles, cars, machines like that. So now this Russian organization is looking for new partners or interested for collaboration with the countries from Africa who are working in the sphere of hydrogen energy, because now I myself also saw a lot of news that in the sphere of hydrogen energy, a lot of countries are working in this sphere, in this direction also already, because this is the future of our countries. So we need to start active dependency on this thing. And secondly, also I want to say that when we are talking about the collaboration between our countries, between Russia, Africa, or India, or other friendly countries, we need to start collaboration by using our local currencies, because we need to stop our dependency on using the dollars or using the euros for doing the international trade between our countries. We need to promote our own countries' national currencies. That would help for in the sphere of de-dollarization also, because somehow when we are using the currencies of US dollars or euro, directly or indirectly, we are trapped under the Western countries or the US. So we need to make our own exchange trade agreements between our countries with our using the local currencies also. And also, when we are talking about the financial system, we need to make our stronger financial system, because if you see Russia as being one of the example country for the whole world, as a lot of thousands and thousands of sanctions has been put on Russia from the last 2 or more than 2 years, but still Russia is standing strong. Why? Because all the friendly countries from BRICS countries or from Africa, from South Asian countries are supporting Russia and doing our trade between our countries. If you see, for example, the cooperation between Russia and India from the last more than 2 years, the trade cooperation, the trade agreements is growing more higher and higher every year. So this is one example. Why? Because now we are already doing our trade agreements, to our trade cooperation between our country by using our local currencies. So this is one example. If Africa would start to do initiative in this way, try to promote their own currency, it would help also. And also one more point I want to stress upon the education part. If you see, you have already been to Russia. A lot of African students are studying in Russia presently right now. And now every year, the Ministry of Higher Education of Russia is providing much more scholarship quotas for the young people from Africa, from Asia, from these countries, because there are much more opportunities. So the young people from Africa can also collaborate with Russia in the sphere of education cooperation and cultural cooperation, because there are so many prospects and capabilities for the young people of African students and African youth to come to Russia and have their higher education, and later they can open their own startup and businesses that would help directly or indirectly to make the more stronger friendly relation and cooperation between the countries also.
Indeed, which is very feasible, dear RISHABH. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to round off with the first topic, which focused on Russia-Africa ties, looking at how the two parties can harness the scope to ensure, that the African continent attains a remarkable level in terms of energy and industries. And of course, I will join you right after this jingle for us to, explore the second topic, which focuses on the G20 leadership that South Africa needs to take, and of course, what agenda it has for the African continent. I will join you right after that. The jingle, and then I will join you right after that. Back, ladies and gentlemen. We're taking, of course, the second topic, South Africa G20 presidency. What agenda for the African continent? Of course, today's Global Insight also interrogates how Africa will navigate its G20 presidency and what agenda is defined for the continent in general. South Africa's upcoming presidency of the G20 presents indeed a pivotal opportunity to shine a spotlight on Africa's developmental priorities and assert the continent's position in the global economic landscape, notably from December 1st, 2024 to November 30th of 2025. South Africa will aim to catalyze change under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development, as the country will take over the helm of leadership from Brazil, which will guide the world towards a more inclusive and representative approach within the established multilateral framework, notably the African Union in the year 2023 attained a permanent membership in the group of 20, which significantly amplified or increased Africa's voice on issues that matter most to its people, being represented at the global or international level holistically. So how can African countries leverage this scope for the continent, particularly in global governance and decision making, as a lot of changes are occurring, and we are leaving the unipolar system to a multipolar system? What scope for the continent as it leverages in its presidency of the group of 20 come December 1st, 2024? And we want to right off with you with this, Rishabh. How can the G20 presidency of South Africa, or maybe let's just say holistically representing the African Union, because before the admission of the African Union into the group of 20, South Africa was the lone country in the continent, or on the continent, being represented in this multilateral organization, the body, the group of 20. How can this G20 presidency then leverage the African Union's inclusion to address, pertinent issues maybe affecting the global world now, particularly in terms of inclusivity, looking at the reforms that needs to come at the United Nations and other areas, that is holistically addressing inequalities and other vices impeding Africa's real intercession in the international decision making?
First of all, Mrs. Clarisse, I want to say that I am very much glad that it was a great news to hear that next year, finally 2025, Africa, especially South Africa, would be hosting the G20 summit. And this would be the proud moment for every citizen of the African continent, of the African countries, because this is the first very big golden chance for Africa to showcase their capabilities, because as Africa have already a very, very strong experience in holding a huge international multilateral event such as BRICS, because already South Africa has hosted BRICS summit several times.
Sure.
And now this would be, I think, the first time that they would be hosting the G20 summit next year. And as when we are talking about the group of G20, the group of developed and the developing countries from the different parts of the world, where all the countries are getting equal chance for their strong collaboration and cooperation in different spheres, and especially in the sphere of economic and trade development between the countries. Yeah. As when we are talking about Africa, you can see already all the BRICS countries are already in the part of G20 also. So it would give equal, much more opportunity for Africa to have a cooperation in another multilateral group for the Africa. And when we are talking about South Africa, as South Africa always helping all the other African countries in terms of investment, trade development, infrastructure development, technology, industrialization, again, South Africa will play a very important role in this G20 summit next year. Because, when we are talking about the new world order, the world is changing very fastly, as we all are living in the 21st century. This is the era of digitalization. Each and every country have their own and equal right to grow, to develop, firstly for their citizens, for the comfort and quality and life for the citizen of their own country.
Yeah.
And secondly, each and every country have their independent right to collaborate and cooperate with the other countries in the sphere of bilateral or multilateral cooperations, because each and every country understands that which countries are right for their future cooperation and collaboration, and which are the friendly or the unfriendly countries. When we are talking about G20, so in G20 you can see the countries from the global south, you can see the countries from the Latin America or other Asian countries, and of course also countries from the Europe. But now if you see G20 is also changing its future pace, because previously if you see G20 was somehow was under the control of the US or the Western countries, but now the time has changed. All the countries are supporting the multipolar world. So G20 somehow also already now trying to make this this change towards moving into the sphere of multipolarization world. So I hope that the next year G20 summit in South Africa would be a great, huge success. And when we are talking about agenda, there are list of agendas that need to be focused. The first main agenda, according to me, should be the climate change and energy sphere, which we have already mentioned before also. And second important agenda is about the food security and agriculture, because of the climate change issue, the whole world is getting a lot of problem in terms of agricultural problems. So we need to focus in that. And third main thing would be the technological advancement, artificial intelligence, because now the whole world is now trying to develop much more new innovation in the terms of artificial intelligence and robotic sphere, which is the future. So we should try to reduce the dependency on the manpower things, and we need to make much more innovation in the sphere of artificial intelligence and robotics also. Indeed. And then also about the quality education and for the reduction of poverty, because this is when we are talking about the developing countries, this is a very important agenda, especially the countries from global south or the countries from the Latin America or from the Africa. So we need to work hard upon between our countries in this sphere and try to make much more strong collaboration so that we can reduce the poverty in our countries and improve the quality of life and comfort for the citizens of our country.
Indeed, very imperative. National interest should also be given a priority, and like you've underlined and defined some of the aspects of the agenda, which we're asking what agenda can the leadership of South Africa at the helm of G20 advocate for the continent Africa. Let me come to you with this question, Michael. We are looking at the African South Africa taking the helm of the G20 in December 2024. And we know that the African continent has been advocating for more, prerogatives, especially as far as taking decisions concern. We saw the case presented should be in the month of June by the leadership of Sierra Leone, patterning Africa's, representation at the United Nations Security Council. And at the end, we saw the U.S. endorsing that Africa be given 2 permanent seats, but then still without a veto power. Do you think the African countries, maybe under the auspices of South Africa, that will hold the leadership of the G20, can still use this platform to reverberate the call for Africa's total, representation in multilateral, organizations that will give the continent more power to make decisions which, very peculiar to the continent, and will eventually propel its, developmental trajectory or agenda?
This South Africa G20 presidency is a great opportunity to recall to us all the place that Africa occupies in modern world, This year, during India's presidency, we have seen that G20 has given a permanent membership to the Organization of African Union, and I believe that this is a great example that Africa can reach its goals in terms of its international representation. I do hope that with the South African leadership in 2025, Africa will be able to claim and claim successfully one more time its just representation in United Nations and in other countries, because today we see a certain disbalance in terms of United Nations representation. First of all, the Security Council, where we have 3 Western powers and only 2 powers that oppose them in a way, which are Russia and China. But they do not only oppose those powers for their own good and benefit, but they also protect the forming multipolar world. And I believe that Africa has to take its rightful place as a permanent member of the Security Council to have this platform for advocating, for promoting its interests, but not only its interests. Africa has also all the possibilities to participate in world in resolving world problems such as Ukrainian conflict, such as Middle East conflict, such as problems in Asian Pacific region. I believe Africa has every right and has a lot of experience in settling different conflicts, in resolving different problems. But for now, we talk a lot about helping Africa to resolve its problems, when I believe a lot of African countries must have a say in resolving world's problems, which is a home to all nations.
Thank you. And just to note that the world is very turbulent at this particular moment, and as we see the 21st century quest for nations to redefine their positions across Africa, and we see countries redefining foreign policy engagement with African countries, but then how intentional and nations across Africa about taking advantage of this multilateralism to leverage the opportunities for its own benefit. And just to quote the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, who recently actually said that as the South African country will be taking the baton of command at the group of 20, they will seek to address inequalities. And now the question is, what scope or how feasible is this given the the shifts in geopolitical competition, where many African countries, Rishabh, seem to be entrapped at this juncture. What feasible policies do you think can be advocated using the presidency of the G20 to curtail some of these diplomatic fluid or geopolitical rivalries across Africa?
It's quite a complicated question, but I will try to answer your question. First of all, when you are talking about during the next year, so exactly after around 1.5 months from 1st of December this year, the South Africa will start to hold their presidency of G20 till the end of next year. So during this presidency, I would say that all the African countries would try to showcase their much more strong capabilities, and a lot of so many, I won't say so many, but still there are many of the African countries which are still under the direct control or under the influence of the Western countries or the European countries. So they should try to get total freedom or free from those control of the European country, and each and every African country try to showcase their own strong capabilities in terms of culture and humanitarian, their traditions, their historical traditions. They should try to showcase to the whole world, because when we are talking about the G20 happening in Africa, especially in South Africa, so it is given a golden chance to all the other African countries to try to promote and to try to showcase their own country capabilities, what they have, and they should try to make strong cooperation with the other friendly countries, especially in terms of bilateral cooperation with the other members of the G20, especially the countries from the Asian continental countries or from the Latin American countries, because it would give them, after the G20, it would give them the equal and mutual benefit for the collaboration and cooperation between these countries, for the development of the stronger ties in terms of the business cooperation, or maybe in terms of the advancement of the technological advancements, or the or in other spheres, for example, agriculture or maybe education and culture. Because when we talk about Africa is a continent which is having a very rich and historical, their culture, their history, their traditions, and even their own local African languages. Because I remember when I traveled to around more than 6 African countries, and when I talk and met with the other African people in these different countries, I was really impressed, as Africa have a very strong golden history. And when I talk to the people, if you see, like example being, I am from India, and we speak English. Why? Because we also have an effect of colonization, but we want to totally eliminate these imprints of this colonization. Same in Africa, the African countries, the people of Africa from different countries, they should try to promote their culture much more and more with the other friendly countries. They should try to promote their own local languages also, like Zulu is one of the very famous African language also. Yeah. So Africa should try to promote much of their more culture, their history, and their tradition with the other friendly countries. So G20 next year would be a golden platform, because as you see, last year when India hosted the G20 summit, we have a lot of different events happened in different sphere in the different states of India. And in each and every state, our country have showcased our local traditions, our local languages, local cuisine, local culture, and the guests from all those other G20 countries, they saw the real India. And similarly, this is an example for the African countries also. Try to much more showcase their own local tradition. This would help for the other countries to get to know each other and to develop stronger cooperation in the sphere of cultural cooperation and humanitarian cooperation between our countries also. Because when we talk about the geopolitical situation between the countries, a lot of difficult geopolitical situations are right now going on in the world, and we should not get under all these difficult things, but we should try to understand who is our real friendly countries and who can support us and who can develop a good quality of life between our countries in the future, for our country and for our youth of the country.
I will stay with you, and then looking at how maybe we can leverage the group of 20 to solidify the existing cooperation or strengthen cooperations among global powers, nations that are actually being fragmented as a result of what you just mentioned, national interest, which is actually clashing with a general interest of nation. How do you think multilateral corporations be strengthened with maybe under the group of 20? And what strategies can Africa, bring forth to ensure this milestone that will bring a clear trajectory for international relations, helping each other to learn and share expertise and maybe mitigate some of these discrepancies along political lines?
When we are talking about the G20 multilateral cooperation between African countries and the other countries, I would stress upon, first of all, if you see, even whether it's a G20 or BRICS or any other summit, there are a lot of member countries and member states also that are participating, or whoever country which is not the part of that group, but they are still interested to make collaboration and cooperation with the host country and with the other countries also. So, for example, next year when the Africa would be hosting this the summit in Africa, in South Africa, in the different cities, different events. So the other observing members will also get a chance to visit to Africa. This would give another chance for the to develop cooperation between the other countries also, which are not the part of the G20 group also. And secondly, of course, as you told that a lot of there are ruling countries in this G20 group, but if you see right now the situation of the world globally, the golden period of the West and the US has already gone. Now the future is Africa, the future is the global South. Because if you see, for example, as I said some few words, like a lot of unlimited number of thousands of sanctions happened on Russia from the last more than 2 years. But why? Still, Russia is standing much more stronger and stronger. Why? Because Russia is not dependent on any other country. They have their own natural resources. They have a lot of possibilities, capabilities, technology, so many things. Similarly, if you see in the global South, why China, why India is growing every year, why the GDP and economy of India is rising at a very fast level. Another example is that because India is also the country which is not dependent for the natural resources and other resources for other countries. India is very famous right now in the world in terms of IT technology. The IT technology is growing at a very fast level year by year, and also in terms of artificial intelligence. And secondly, also the youth population, because right now India is having the biggest population in the world, but also India is having the #1 youth population in the world, which matters a lot. So similarly, when I come back to Africa, the whole world knows that Africa has one of the biggest capabilities and biggest availability of natural resources. Africa is no need to be dependent on those European countries. Africa itself a very, very strong continent because of the availability of natural resources. Only thing is to the important and the only thing is to understand which partner is friendly and which partner is more genuine and more faithful, trustworthy, for the equal and mutual respect to each other and for the equal mutual development for each other, to help each other for the development of themselves and their country also. And also when you talk about how we can achieve this, because we need to understand, as I told a few times words ago, that we need to make collaboration, we need to make trade agreement, we need to make different type of businesses between our countries by using our country's financial systems, our own country's local currencies, not using the dependency on those dollars or euros, because the more you use those currency, you are supporting those countries, you are giving much more dependency on them. So we need to forget the dependency, and we need to trust our own currencies, and we need to promote much more and more. We need to make much more new alternatives right now, because like internet system, what is happening right now in the global internet system also. So whatever organizations or whatever companies which are being based in US or in the Europe, so all those countries try to control those organizations. One of the simple example is United Nations. Why United Nations was formed, why United Nations was opened. But if you see from the last more than 2 years, all those global conflicts are happening, but United Nations is not somehow not able to resolve those major conflicts which are happening globally. Second example is the international sport event Olympics being the headquarter in these European country, but still in these sporting events like Olympics, they are mixing all these sporting events with politics, and they are not allowing the athletes from Russia, from Belarus, or maybe from other countries to participate. But what is the mistake of a sports person, for an athlete? So for this alternative, the BRICS Games was formed this year, which was held in Russia this year, as one of the very major big event where more than 75 countries participated. So such alternatives need to be started, initiated, and Africa together with the other friendly countries need to understand and to make such initiative that could help and benefit between the cooperation of our friendly countries, and need to stop the dependency on those countries which are only using for their selfish means. Because of that, a lot of African countries do not get equal opportunities to grow or to improve their infrastructure or the quality of life. Only together with the Latin American countries, Africa and the Asian country and Eurasia can make this successful achievement of this thing.
Times are changing, global dynamics. We're going to culminate this session with you, Mikhail. When we look at the countries of the group of 20, we see most of the world's buoyant economies, like the United States. We even have the European Union and other countries, the UK, the countries that have had some, commendable economic priorities or development, political, and so on and so forth. So now let's try to understand with bringing the philosophy of multipolarity that dictates that people need to come together and respect each other, help each other to thrive in the ever-changing world. How can these already established countries try to sustain developing countries, particularly the African continent, because according to some pundits, some of these positions of leadership that they give to the African continent is just theoretically, because the continent cannot practically take decisive moves that would turn things around for its development. So how can we leverage this multilateral platform to ensure that stronger economies sustain the growing economies and bring about a more balance of power and other aspects for global cooperation?
Well, when we are talking about helping developing African countries with a group of 20, which, as you have just mentioned, are the biggest and most developed economies of the world, we are talking about African debt, because African countries have huge external debt, and it stops, it blocks a lot of possibilities for development. Either if we are talking about the cost of paying back these debts, or if we are talking about taking on new credits, which is quite difficult with African economies being deep in debt. So what we need here is restructuring African external debt. We have Russia, we have China as countries who lend a lot of money to African countries, and Russia, on its part, from time to time, restructures debts of African countries. But this process should be more global if we are talking about taking action and not just having negotiations about helping Africa. This is one of the crucial points, reducing African debt. The other point which we have very well discussed during our first session is giving sufficient energetic systems to African countries to bolster economic growth. And the third point, which I'd like to highlight as a head of French department of my news agency, it is mass media communications. The image of Africa in the eyes of many people is quite grim and disturbing. We always hear Africa has conflicts, Africa has wars, Africa has hunger, Africa has insufficient energetic systems, Africa has diseases, etc., etc. Yes, there are problems in Africa, but it is not all, it is not everything Africa has. We, as media, have to talk about opportunities and possibilities in Africa. We have to talk about rich natural resources, about huge human potential of these countries. We have to talk about touristic opportunities on this country, on this continent. We have to talk about rich cultural heritage of African nations. Okay. All these things are huge advantages of African continent and of African countries. And we as media have to promote that. We have to make people see that Africa is not all, if I may say so, black and dark and green. It has bright sides, and we, both African nations and nations of the world, have to concentrate on exploiting and developing advantages of Africa, bright sides of Africa, instead of focusing on what is bad.
Absolutely, which is very imperative for Africa is the future, and it can leverage its representation at multilateral or international levels to bring forth to the fore its potentials, its opportunities, and of course take the position where it maybe needs to occupy. We see already there's the wind of change blowing across the African continent, and it has been commendable with the Sahelian countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and it is actually blowing across the continent and hoping to see more decisive decisions taken and Africa given a stronger voice to be able to defend its interests at every sphere. I wish to thank you, gentlemen and lady, for the great insight pertaining our topics for discussion this day that brought Africa to the fore, bringing its potentials and how the continent can leverage its international partners, particularly the Russian Federation, and also its position as the impending presidency of the G20 to defend its agenda, practical and clear agenda that will fast track its developmental trajectory defined in the historic agenda 2063. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the rendezvous with us and for trusting the Pan-African Television for You Media. And always keep in mind, it is another view of the world, bringing the new face and new perspectives of the African continent in collaboration with the global world. Bye-bye, and do have a lovely moment in the company of programs on For You Media Africa.